You know, I never thought much about breathing. It's just something you do, right? Until you can't. My name's Frank Thompson. I served in Vietnam from 68 to 70, and for the longest time, I just chalked up my shortness of breath to getting older. That's what happens when you hit your 70s, I'd tell myself. Couldn't walk up the stairs without stopping halfway. Couldn't play with my grandkids for more than a few minutes before needing to sit down. I figured that's just life catching up with me. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. And that mistake nearly cost me everything. Looking back, the signs were there for years. I'd get winded bringing in groceries. Started avoiding the upstairs bedroom in our house because the climb was too much. My wife Janet would say, "Frank, that cough doesn't sound right," but I'd wave her off. "It's just a smoker's cough," I'd tell her. Truth is, I started smoking in the army. Back then, cigarettes came right in our ration packs. Can you believe that? The government was practically encouraging us to smoke. After Vietnam, the smoking habit stuck. It was how we dealt with everything we'd seen over there. I quit about 15 years ago, but I guess the damage was already done. Still, I kept telling myself it was just age. Just the normal wear and tear of a body that had seen its fair share of living. The turning point came at my grandson's baseball game last spring. Tyler was pitching, and he struck out 3 batters in a row. Everyone jumped up cheering. I stood up too fast, and it felt like someone had wrapped a belt around my chest and was pulling it tight. Couldn't catch my breath. My daughter saw my face turning blue and called an ambulance. That trip to the ER, that's when everything changed. The doctor in the emergency room listened to my lungs and ordered some tests. Spirometry, they called it, where you blow into this machine that measures your lung function. They did a chest X-ray too. I remember lying there, hooked up to oxygen, watching my family's worried faces, and thinking, this is more than just getting old, isn't it? The doctor came back with a serious look on his face. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "you have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's a progressive lung condition that makes it hard to breathe. COPD." 4 letters that changed everything. He explained that COPD is actually an umbrella term that includes emphysema and chronic bronchitis. In my case, I had elements of both. My lungs were damaged. The tiny air sacs that exchange oxygen were breaking down, and my airways were inflamed and clogged with mucus. "Is it because I smoked?" I asked him. "Smoking is the leading cause," he said. "But your exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam could be a contributing factor too." That hit me like a punch to the gut. All these years later, the war was still taking its toll. The hardest part wasn't the diagnosis. It was going home and facing what COPD really meant for my daily life. Suddenly, I had to think about breathing, something most people never give a second thought to. They sent me home with inhalers, medications, and an oxygen tank for when things got bad. My living room started looking like a medical supply store. Janet had to learn how to check my oxygen levels with this little device that clips onto your finger. My pill organizer went from having a couple of compartments to this massive weekly system. But the real wake-up call came about 2 weeks after my diagnosis. My youngest granddaughter, Lily, she's 5, came running into the house, excited to show me a picture she'd drawn at kindergarten. "Grandpa, Grandpa," she shouted, bouncing up and down. "I made this for you." I bent down to look. And that simple movement left me gasping for air. The look on her little face. Confusion, then fear. She thought she'd done something wrong. "Grandpa's just a little tired, sweetheart," I managed to say. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried for the first time since I returned from Vietnam. I wasn't just mourning my health. I was mourning the grandfather I wanted to be, active, involved, present. Not some old man tethered to an oxygen tank. That's when I realized COPD wasn't just taking my breath away. It was threatening to take away my role in my family. And that was something I couldn't accept. So I did what any good soldier would do. I gathered intelligence. I needed to understand the enemy to fight it. I learned that COPD affects nearly 16 million Americans, but millions more have it and don't know. It's the third leading cause of death by disease in the United States. And here's the kicker. Most people don't get diagnosed until they've already lost half their lung function. Half. I started recognizing the classic symptoms I'd been ignoring. That persistent cough, especially in the mornings, the wheezing when I exerted myself, the tightness in my chest that I blamed on indigestion, the shortness of breath that kept getting worse, how easily I'd catch colds that would linger for weeks, and then there were the flare-ups, what doctors call exacerbations, times when symptoms suddenly get worse. For me, a simple cold could turn into pneumonia if I wasn't careful. I also learned that while COPD can't be cured, it can be managed. The progression can be slowed down. You can have a good quality of life if you're proactive. But that was the key, being proactive. No more denial. No more excuses. My doctor referred me to pulmonary rehabilitation, or pulmonary rehab, as us regulars call it. I'll be honest, I didn't want to go at first. Sounded like a waste of time. But Janet put her foot down. "Frank Thompson," she said, "we've been married for 47 years, and I'm not about to start shopping for caskets because you're too stubborn to take care of yourself." That woman has a way with words. So I went. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. Pulmonary rehab is like boot camp for your lungs. They teach you breathing techniques, energy conservation, exercise tolerance. They help you build up your stamina safely. I met other veterans there with COPD. Men who'd served in different wars, but were fighting same battle now. We formed our own little unit. Started holding each other accountable. If Joe didn't show up for a session, he'd get 4 phone calls checking on him. The respiratory therapists taught us pursed-lip breathing, where you breathe in through your nose and out through your lips like you're blowing out a candle, but slowly. It helps keep your airways open longer. And diaphragmatic breathing, using your diaphragm muscle correctly instead of just your chest. They had us doing exercises with light weights to strengthen our arms and legs. Because when you have COPD, any physical activity takes more oxygen. So the stronger your muscles are, the less oxygen they need to do the same work. After 3 months of rehab, I could walk around the block without stopping. Might not sound like much to you, but to me, it was like climbing Mount Everest. Living with COPD means rethinking everything. And I mean everything. I had to learn to pace myself. Break tasks down into smaller steps. Rest before I get tired, not after. Plan my days around my energy levels. Mornings are usually better for me, so that's when I schedule anything important. Our house changed too. Janet and I moved our bedroom to the first floor. We got rid of the heavy curtains and shag carpets that trapped dust. switched to cleaners without harsh chemicals that could trigger my symptoms. I had to become obsessive about avoiding infections. Flu shots, pneumonia vaccines, washing hands constantly. During cold and flu season, I became something of a hermit. Better safe than sorry. The hardest adaptation. Learning to ask for help. For a Marine who prided himself on self-reliance, that was tough. But COPD teaches you humility. It teaches you that there's no shame in needing others. I started carrying a rescue inhaler everywhere. Learned which foods made my breathing worse. For me, it's dairy and super spicy stuff. Had to give up my beloved hot wings. That hurt almost as much as the COPD itself. And then there's the oxygen. I don't need it all the time, thank goodness. But I do need it when I exercise or if my levels drop too low. The portable concentrator goes with me to the grandkids' events now. At first, I was embarrassed. Didn't want people staring, asking questions. But then Tyler, my baseball-playing grandson, said something I'll never forget. He said, "Grandpa, your oxygen tank just means you're stronger than whatever's trying to stop you." Out of the mouths of babes, right? There's something unique about COPD and veterans, especially Vietnam vets like me. Beyond the smoking, we were exposed to all kinds of environmental hazards, Agent Orange being the most notorious. I connected with the VA after my diagnosis. Turns out, COPD is on their list of presumptive conditions for Agent Orange exposure. That meant I qualified for disability benefits I hadn't known about. The VA also connected me with a support group specifically for veterans with respiratory issues. Being around other vets who understood both the physical and psychological aspects of dealing with a service-connected illness. It made a difference. One guy in our group, a Navy vet named Mike, put it this way: "We survived the war just to fight our own bodies decades later." That's the thing about COPD and veterans. For many of us, it's not just about the smoking. It's about where we served, what we were exposed to. It adds another layer to the whole experience. And there's a certain, I don't know, irony isn't the right word. But there's something about surviving combat only to struggle for breath while sitting in your recliner 50 years later. But here's what I want other vets to know. The same resilience that got you through your service can help you manage COPD. The same discipline, the same determination. It's just a different kind of battle. Let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, the emotional toll of COPD. Because it's not just a physical disease. It affects your mind, your spirit. There's the fear, first of all. The panic that comes when you can't catch your breath. The anxiety about whether the next flare-up might be the one that puts you in the hospital for good. There's the frustration of not being able to do things you once took for granted. The grief for the active life you've lost. And yes, there's depression. I went through a dark period about 6 months after my diagnosis. Started withdrawing from family gatherings because I was embarrassed about my coughing, my oxygen. Janet finally convinced me to talk to someone, a psychologist at the VA who specializes in chronic illness. He helped me see that I was mourning my old self, and that was normal. But he also helped me find ways to focus on what I could still do, not just what I'd lost. I started keeping a gratitude journal. Sounds cheesy, I know. This old Marine, writing down 3 things he's thankful for each day. But it helped shift my perspective. I'm grateful I can still watch my grandkids grow up. I'm grateful for medical advances that help me manage my symptoms. I'm grateful for Janet, who's been by my side through every battle. The emotional journey with COPD is like a roller coaster. Some days are better than others. But acknowledging those feelings instead of burying them, that's been key to my coping. Now, I tell my story not for sympathy, but as a warning. A wake-up call. If you're experiencing shortness of breath, chronic cough, wheezing, chest tightness, don't do what I did. Don't ignore it. Don't chalk it up to just getting older, especially if you're a veteran. Especially if you smoked. Especially if you were exposed to chemicals, burn pits, Agent Orange, asbestos, any of the countless hazards we faced in service. Get checked. A simple breathing test called spirometry can detect COPD before it becomes severe. Before you end up in the ER like I did. And if you've already been diagnosed, know that you're not alone. There are millions of us living with this condition. Fighting for every breath, yes, but still living. Still finding joy. COPD isn't a death sentence. It's a challenge. And if there's one thing veterans know, it's how to face a challenge. My journey with COPD has given me a new mission. About a year after my diagnosis, I started volunteering with the American Lung Association. Became an advocate for better research funding, better access to treatment, better support for patients. I speak at VA hospitals now. Talk to younger veterans about protecting their lung health. Warning them about the dangers that might not show up for decades. I've testified before state legislators about clean air initiatives. Because when you can't breathe, you suddenly care a whole lot about air quality. This advocacy work, it's given purpose to my pain, meaning to my struggle. It's allowed me to serve again in a different way. And through it all, I've discovered something unexpected: gratitude. Not for the disease, never for that, but for the perspective it's given me. The appreciation for simple moments. The awareness of each breath. I don't take anything for granted anymore. Not a walk in the park with Janet. Not a conversation with my children. Not the sound of my grandkids' laughter. Every breath is precious when you have to fight for it. That's the paradoxical gift of COPD. It takes your breath away, but it also makes you deeply grateful for each breath you have. So here I am, 5 years after that terrifying trip to the ER. 5 years of learning to live with damaged lungs. 5 years of adapting, adjusting, accepting. I won't pretend it's been easy. There have been setbacks, hospitalizations, days when breathing felt like trying to suck air through a coffee stirrer. But I'm still here. Still fighting. Still breathing. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, the shortness of breath, the chronic cough, the excuses we tell ourselves, please don't wait. Talk to your doctor. Get tested. Early diagnosis makes all the difference with COPD. If you're a veteran, reach out to your VA. Ask about respiratory health evaluations. Ask about service connection for respiratory conditions. And if you're already living with COPD, know this: you can have a good life. A different life than you planned, maybe, but still a life worth living. Join a support group. Look into pulmonary rehabilitation. Learn everything you can about managing your condition. Connect with organizations like the COPD Foundation or the American Lung Association. Most importantly, don't give up. Don't surrender to despair. As we used to say in the Marines, adapt and overcome. Because every breath matters. Every single one. This is Frank Thompson, signing off. Remember to cherish your lungs, friends. They're doing important work with every breath you take. Thank you for listening to my story.